It's become somewhat of a tradition that I go over my top add-ons for Home Assistant at the beginning of each year, and this is no exception. So in this video, I'm going to go over those top add-ons, except this time I'm going to go over add-ons that if they didn't exist or I didn't use them, my home would not be a smart home. I'm going to call these my critical add-ons. I'm going to do the add-ons that you can install directly in Home Assistant, and then in a future video, I probably will be doing some of the hacks add-ons that I use because those are also important to keeping my Home Assistant or my smart home running. So let's get into it. All right, let's jump right into my first add-on. I call this one the critical add-on or a critical add-on, probably the #1 critical add-on, and that's the Zwave JS UI. This is a must for my smart home. If I didn't have this, I would not be able to do anything in my smart home. Most of my stuff runs on Zwave. I've got light switches. I've got lamps running on smart plugs. I've got temperature and humidity sensors. I've got some of my stuff that runs on my alarm panel or my alarm system that runs through Zwave. I started with Zwave as my very first infrastructure ecosystem on Home Assistant, and that's what I've stuck with. I do have some other stuff I'll talk about in a minute, but this is the most critical of all of my add-ons. If I were to turn off Zwave today, pretty much everything would stop working. Now, in order to use Zwave, you need some sort of Zwave dongle, and I don't know of any device that has it built in right now that I'm running Home Assistant on or that runs Home Assistant. So what I have here is something similar to this. I actually have an older version of this, but this works just fine. This is a Z-Stick 7. It is a 7 Plus or Zwave Plus USB stick that you can use in Home Assistant that will allow you to use the Z-Wave stuff. So if you're going to do Z-Wave, you'll need a hub to do that with. You can also use the Sky Connect from Home Assistant as well. I actually use the Sky Connect for something else I'll show you here in just a minute. All right, number one most critical add-on is this one right here. So let's go on to our next one, which is going to be our Zigbee to MQTT. Now, I don't have as many devices on this one. I have 11 total devices. A lot of these are going to be temperature and humidity sensors. Also, there will be presence sensors, motion sensors, and then a lot of my door sensors that I use for my alarm system. So a lot of these things are strictly monitoring. I don't have anything right now that I control with Zigbee. This came at a much later date for me. I've heard lots of stories about the Zigbee networks and how they don't play well. And I will say that Z-Wave has been rock solid for me since the beginning. I've seen issues with other folks as well, but I really haven't had anything. But the Zigbee stuff, there was a little bit of a learning curve. The stuff I'm using are all of these Aquara devices. They're actually manufactured apparently by Xiaomi. I've got one Tuya device, one Sonoff device. This is actually a hallway plug that is a repeater for the area that I'm in over there. So all these Xiaomi devices, and using Zigbee to MQTT allows me to add non-standard Zigbee devices. Some of the stuff that you can add with the ZHA add-on in Home Assistant, which is their native add-on, doesn't play well. But again, I'm new to Zigbee. Got these devices that are just monitor devices, and they last forever on a battery. So I'm really pleased with the way Zigbee has been working. And then I set up this little thing that tells me if these go offline or they are last seen, I don't know, I forgot what it was, a couple hours, it'll tell me they're offline and I have to go figure out why. But for the most part, they stay online all the time. This I also call a critical part of my home automation because of the pieces that belong to the alarm system. With Zigbee to MQTT, I also use the Sky Connect from Home Assistant, which is this little thing right here. And this is just a little Zigbee dongle that you can plug in, a USB thing. And it also has thread on a single chip. I mentioned before you could do Z-Wave on this. This is only Zigbee. You can't do Z-Wave with this particular deal. So if you want to do Zigbee, then you can use something like this, or you can get any other of the other Zigbee controllers that are out there. So there we go. This is number 2, Zigbee to MQTT. All right, the next one I'm going to jump into is called Node-RED. Node-RED is a graphical, or I'm going to read what their website says. It is a programming tool for wiring together hardware, devices, APIs, and online services in a new and interesting ways. It provides a browser-based editor that makes it easy to wire together flows using the wide range of nodes in the palette that can be deployed to its runtime in a single click. So before I started using the automations in Home Assistant on a regular basis, I was using Node-RED. And one of the reasons why is because Node-RED or Home Assistant was YAML based for all of their automations. You had to write them all in YAML. There was no really easy user interface. They've come a long way since I started using Home Assistant probably 5 or so years ago. Now you can do stuff through the UI. In fact, there's been some recent changes to the automations that allow it to be even easier to use. Plus, there's community blueprints for a lot of things that can be done within Home Assistant. You just import the blueprint and then you do whatever. But Node-RED does a couple things for me. First of all, I would have to go through and change all of these things and make them work within Home Assistant. And for time's sake purposes, I don't have time to do that right now. Plus, it's easier for me to take a node and reroute it, rewire it to something else, and then deploy it. And then I can just change things on the fly. You can also do troubleshooting real easily. You can do debugging. There's a whole debug window. All of these Home Assistant nodes are available for you to use with Node-RED. So it is a really nice interface for those that are visual programmers, kind of like I am. I like being able to see things as they flow through. You'll notice in some of these things here, you can see how when it last updated, what it did, when it was called, things. So you can kind of get a visual representation of that. You can do the same thing with traces in the automation now in Home Assistant. So it's not something where you have to use Node-RED, but if I were to turn off Node-RED today, a lot of my automations would stop working. A lot of my critical, you can see up here, I've got alarm actions, door actions, motion monitors, some of my thermostat stuff. I also go in here and do things for vacation modes. Whenever I'm away, I don't want things to turn back on or off when I'm on vacation, when the alarm is armed, all that stuff. So I have a lot of neat stuff that I do in Node-RED. I call it critical because, again, turning it off would just basically break my Home Assistant or my home automation stuff. So that's number 3 on my list of critical add-ons for this 2024 year. All right, let's get out of this one. Let's go back over to our list of add-ons. And I'm going to talk about the Mosquitto Broker. Mosquitto Broker is here, and there's no web page or anything for this one. You can see there's nowhere to go other than to start it and stop it. So I want to talk about what a Mosquitto Broker is. If you ask one of your favorite AI tools what it is, it will tell you that the Mosquitto Broker add-on is an implementation of the MQTT broker, facilitating communication between devices and applications through the MQTT protocol. It acts as a central hub for the exchange of lightweight messages, supporting efficient and scalable communication in the Internet of Things and other distributed systems. Whew, that's a lot. So to dumb it down or to simplify it, it basically allows my stuff to talk between the device itself and Home Assistant and then back out again. So it's communicating important stuff from all of my devices around my smart home to Home Assistant and allow Home Assistant to send stuff back to IoT devices. If you'll remember, my Zwave controller, where is it at here? My Zwave JS UI is a MQTT-based add-on. My Zigbee to MQTT is also an add-on that is based on MQTT. And if you use a tool like this MQTT Explorer, you can see here how many messages and topics that Zwave has generated. 2,796 topics and 4,433 messages just for Zwave itself. We've got 7 topics, 1,443 messages for Zigbee. So here's all the different topics that are in my Zwave stuff. So you can see that for criticality purposes, if I were to shut off the MQTT broker, just like shutting off Zwave JS or Zigbee to MQTT, everything would stop working, or most things would stop working. The MQTT broker, this right here, Mosquitto Broker, is a very, very important piece of my home assistant and home automation setup. Without it, my smart home would not be smart. So this is why it's number 4 on my list of add-ons that I must have in Home Assistant for 2024 and in the future, and also in the past. All right, so we've talked about the top 4. Let's talk about number 5. That is Samba Backup or Samba Backup. Again, this has no interface. Basically, you have a configuration section on here and you fill it out to connect to wherever you're going to back up to. I have a NAS that I use to back up my Home Assistant to. Let me just take a moment and talk about backups. The reason that this is on my list, and it should always be on my list as a critical function of my smart home, is that if you don't back up your smart home setup, you're going to have a failure and you're not going to be able to recover without manually redoing everything. That is a fact. Over the course of the 5 years or so that I've been running Home Assistant, I've restored completely from scratch, I think 2 times. And then I've also done some restores, or I've done some moving of from one platform to another using that file, the backup file. So it's become important to restore. And also, if I want to make a configuration change or a hardware change, I just update it and then move it to that one. You need to have a backup. Absolutely need to have some sort of backup solution, and you need to make sure that it's actually working. Mine goes to my file server. It keeps 3 copies on the file server, or 5 copies on the file server, 3 on Home Assistant instance itself. So I always have a backup to use. If you're not backing up, you're just going to have a failure and you're going to be very sad one day. So make sure you're backing up. It is easy to do that with something like the Samba Backup. There's also other versions of this. You can do a backup to Google Drive. So you have that option as well. There are add-ons for that. This is a critical part of my Home Assistant instance for disaster recovery. Without it, then I have no Home Assistant, or I have no smart home if my device fails and I have no way to recover without rebuilding it all from scratch. All right, so that is the top 5 critical add-ons that I want to talk about. You can see here all of the other ones that I'm running, such as AdGuard Home, which is my DNS server. Uptime Kuma monitors all of my infrastructure. My password vault is Vault Warden now. I've started using some of the, what is it called? The Home Assistant voice assist stuff using Whisper. I think Piper's in here somewhere. It should be. Yep, Piper's in here for all of the voice assist stuff that they're doing now. ESP Home allows me to do ESP stuff, ESP devices, and all of this. So that's it. That is my top 5 critical applications or add-ons for Home Assistant that you can install through Home Assistant itself. If you would like me to do the top whatever 3 or 4 or 5 of my hack stuff, my HACS stuff, if you want me to make a video on that, let me know down in the comments and I will do that as well. With that, that is today's video, this week's video. I appreciate you all watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for those that support me. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.